If you want a free tub of cashew cacao nut butter, and I mean a giant tub, like the size of my head, huge bucket, pail full of this chocolate spread, all you need to do is give this show a 5-star rating and review in whatever podcast app you listen in. So, just to recap for my listeners, each month we are doing giveaways of some of my favorite products, and every month is a different item. And so every month you have a new chance of winning. This month, I am gifting someone Artisana Organics organic chocolate spread that literally tastes like Nutella, but so much healthier with 0 chemicals. And the ingredients are just organic cashews, organic coconut sugar, organic cacao powder, organic coconut MCT oil, and organic vanilla. That's it. Just give this podcast a 5-star rating and review. And every last episode of every month is where I will be announcing the winner. So don't miss those episodes because you may end up missing me announcing that you are the winner.
Between 20 and 35% of people are experiencing long COVID. So we're talking about millions of people who are experiencing this. Another study I want to reference, it was talking about how they found that those with severe long COVID had lower qualities of life than those who had stage 4 cancer.
If you had COVID during 2020 or 2021, please listen. In this episode, we not only discuss why you're currently having unexplained mysterious symptoms no doctor can pinpoint, but I also share my own health struggles that I've been experiencing since 2020 that I haven't shared much about on Instagram and other social platforms. There seems to be a huge link between anyone that got COVID, like I did back in 2020, and current health issues that just haven't seemed to go away or only come up in quote flares. If you've been experiencing things like exercise intolerance, a racing heartbeat, anxiety that comes out of nowhere, even when you know you're not fearful or anxious about anything, insomnia, waking up to pee 3 to 5 times during the night, or symptoms of a UTI, but the tests always come back negative and you don't actually have a UTI, then just keep listening because these side effects, these feelings and reactions are just a few of several other random mysterious issues that could be all linked to histamine intolerance, which is also linked back to COVID. I speak with Michelle Shapiro, who explains in more detail what histamine intolerance is, what foods trigger it, what wellness routines trigger it, such as exercise, vitamin C IVs, drinking bone broth, and so many other, quote, wellness regimens so many of us do that could actually be hindering and causing these so-called flares. We talk about why many experience these symptoms only in flares and why some days or some months we feel fine, then all of a sudden it's like we have no energy, skin rashes everywhere, have chronic gut issues for weeks on end. And speaking of gut issues, if you feel like your digestion has never been the same since you had COVID, there could be a connection. So Michelle breaks it down and also explains how we can get our life back. So there's good news here. So please save this episode to reference back to, share it with a friend or family member, and share it on social media so that others can also benefit from listening. I truly hope this helps you shed some light on your mysterious health issues and, of course, gives you hope and direction in where to go next. You're listening to the Digest This podcast, and I'm your host, Bethany Cameron. Let's get right into it. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Bethany, it's my joy to be here. I can't wait to dive into our million juicy topics that we want to go into. I'm so excited.
Yes, I know. And I already know we're going to have you back because this is a long-awaited topic. And before I even get into it, I like to start my podcast with rapid fire yes or no questions. There's only about 4, but you can only answer yes or no. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay. First question. Could COVID have caused a reaction in our body that changed the way we now handle illness?
Yes.
Mm. Are people still suffering with long COVID and just not know it?
Yes.
Could a histamine intolerance be the cause of your gut issues?
Yes.
Mm. Last question. Could your gut issues be the cause of a histamine intolerance?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
If you're looking for a safe, natural sweetener to add to your drinks, desserts, oatmeal, smoothies, and basically anything you want sweetened up, I got a recommendation that not only will add sweetness to your life, but also add loads of health benefits. Manucora contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health, contains 3 times more antioxidants than your typical sweetener, and also contains a special antibacterial compound called MGO. If you haven't guessed by now, Manucora is a special type of Manuka honey ethically produced by master beekeepers in the remote forests of New Zealand. This honey is rich, creamy, and may just be the most delicious honey you've ever tasted. This isn't just your average honey. I mean, we all know raw honey is great for you, but raw Manuka honey is even better because of the MGO found in Manuka honey specifically. And what I love about the brand is that they do third-party testing for every single batch, ensuring the potency of the MGO claimed. And they even provide those specific test results on every single jar through their QR system so you can check out the batch you have in your hand. That's honestly a pet peeve of mine when companies say they do third-party testing, but only do it once in a while or on one batch, only to find out the batch you purchased wasn't even tested. But you can be sure Manucora goes the extra step to provide results for every batch on every jar, providing you with the most delicious antioxidant-rich and antimicrobial healing honey. This stuff is a game changer and easier than ever to incorporate into your diet. All you need is 1 teaspoon each morning to benefit the amazing bioactives of Manucora honey. And right now is the best time to try Manucora honey. They're running their biggest sale of the year through December 2nd. Just head on over to manucora.com/digest to get $150 off your first order of their Black Friday starter kit, which comes with an MGO of 850 Manucora honey jar, 35 travel honey sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. Again, that's manucora.com/digest for $150 off your starter kit. So I recently started seeing this new functional practitioner who is very well renowned, and she asked me to list all the supplements I was taking. And I mentioned I was taking Fatty 15. I already assumed, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to explain to her what Fatty 15 even is. But to my surprise, she knew right away what it was and was like, oh, good, keep taking that. And that just made me feel so good and affirmed my own research and decision as to what I was putting into my body, knowing that it was the best. I love sharing my personal stories when it comes to products I've been taking. And if you've been a listener for a while and follow me on Instagram, then you know how much I rave about Fatty 15. The fatty acid known as C15 is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in 90 years. And the best part is that it is 100% vegan. Fatty 15 is delivering the world's first pure science-backed C15 supplement and has 3 times the healthy aging cell benefits of omega-3 or fish oil. That is crazy, you guys. This fatty acid is derived from plants using a patented oxidation-resistant technology, resulting in a pure form of C15. It's vegan and contains no flavors, fillers, allergens, or preservatives. C15 is the only ingredient in Fatty 15, which I absolutely love that this company doesn't add anything else. It's 100% pure. Fatty 15 is also proven to resist oxidation factors both in and outside of the body and works in multiple ways. It repairs age-related damage to cells, protects from future breakdown, boosts mitochondria energy output, and activates pathways in the body that helps regulate our sleep, mood, and natural repair mechanisms for healthier aging overall. So, whether you're vegan, don't like the taste of fish oil, or don't want to ingest rancid oils that are commonly found in fish oil supplements today, try Fatty 15 to help support and restore your long term health. And who would I be without offering a discount to the Digest This community? So, Fatty 15 has graciously given me the ability to offer you 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit. Just go to fatty15.com/digest and use code DIGEST at checkout. You can cancel anytime, by the way. That's FATTY, the number 15.com/digest, or use code DIGEST at checkout. What is histamine intolerance, by the way? Because I feel like maybe people may not know it, but they need to know what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll even walk it one step back and say, what is histamine too in this explanation? When you're hearing about, or anyone's hearing about, histamine intolerance or something called mast cell activation syndrome, people might see it abbreviated as MCAS. We call it MCAS. That's how you might hear me talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about these highly intelligent cells in our body. They're white blood cells called mast cells. And they really are kind of guard cells to our body. Like if there's a guard on the door of our cells. And what happens is if there's any immune activation or nervous system activation, basically particles can attach on the outside of these mast cells and they can release chemicals. There's over 1,000 different chemicals they can release to send messages to the rest of the body. One of those messengers that they send is histamine. And histamine generally is really helpful for us. It helps with a robust immune response. It helps our blood vessels to widen and dilate so that we can get different nutrients and immune cells really quickly to other parts of the body. But the issue is that when we are releasing so many histamines, because those mast cells are being activated so frequently, we actually end up with symptoms from just those histamines being in the bloodstream or in the cells. Histamine intolerance is either that people have a buildup of those histamines and they do not feel well when they're there, or an inability to get rid of them, to release them, or they just even have a normal amount of histamines, but they're more receptive to experiencing symptoms from those histamines.
Okay. And I want to talk about, histamine symptoms, what causes a flare. But before we even get into that, I would love for you to quickly just share your own experience with histamine intolerance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first half of my career, I really focused on helping people with issues that I had been through. I had major weight loss. I lost 100 pounds over like 15 years ago. And then as a result of that weight loss, I had anxiety, I had thyroid issues, I had gut issues, and really resolved those. And then for many years, felt a lot better. It took COVID, a combination of COVID and mold together, which I have called moldvid before, which is this like perfect storm that happened to me, and then a neck injury, which I ended up realizing all those things were related, for me to go into this like new wave of illness that I was experiencing. And what I've been seeing, Bethany, so much is people have these experiences where they're actually not even chronically ill, and then they have mold or COVID exposure, and then they become these like chronically ill people. And it's so new and unfortunate. So there's this kind of new storm of illness. And that's really what I've been focusing on, is the experience I had where I would stand up, my heart rate would jump to 160. I felt like I couldn't see out of my eyes. I was dizzy all day, severe tremors. Histamines for me showed up not at all like a rash or seasonal allergies. It showed up as all of these extreme symptoms that I just could not understand or explain until I could, thankfully.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people are experiencing these unexplainable symptoms and illness where they've done all the things, they've done their lab works, and everything comes back normal, but they're like, I'm having all these reactions. Why am I feeling this way? Like, I'm not normal. So what are some of the causes of histamine intolerance? Like, could it be your diet or medication, or like what causes it?
Absolutely. So the reasons that we might have too much of a release from our mast cells, because there's different reasons why you're experiencing those histamine symptoms. Again, are you not getting rid of them? Are you particularly susceptible to just feeling excess histamines, or are you producing too many histamines? You may produce too many histamines because those mast cells in any way think you're not safe. So that's just what our body does. Our body's like, are we not safe? Let's release a bunch of immune cells and a bunch of inflammatory compounds to try to help to mitigate the situation. one thing I want to tell you also is that COVID has a very specific relationship with mast cells because there's a receptor on the outside of the mast cell called the ACE2 receptor. COVID attached right to the mast cells. And that's why people were getting histamine issues from COVID specifically. The bigger thing and issue is that why we would all be susceptible is because a lot of us have existing gut issues or liver issues, and because of that, we don't have the capacity to get rid of histamines, or we overproduce them because there's an inflammatory process going on. So if there's any inflammation, that leaves you at risk, as well as not having the proper enzymes or nutrients for your liver to function to get rid of those histamines too.
This is so interesting because when I got COVID, I actually got it a few times. I feel like a lot of people did. But it was like, 2020, the first strain, right? And this was like the bad strain. Now people get COVID. It's like a typical flu, right? It's nothing. But in 2020, it was bad. And so when I got it in 2020, I still to this very day, it's almost 2025. I have never felt the same. Like, obviously I don't have COVID now, but I have never been able to work out like I used to. I will work out for like 5 minutes and I will be so winded. And like, and the workout wasn't even intense. It was like Pilates or yoga, you know what I mean? And I am like, how come I have to lay down for like 2 hours after 5 minutes of yoga,
Right. And this is, you're someone who's been practicing exercising for so many years. Like, this is not Bethany's body, is the way that it feels. Like, it just doesn't feel like you. Like, this is not, it's not even a cardio thing. It's something else. And we can talk about why that happens. And something that's really important to talk about is that a lot of times people develop mast cell activation syndrome or histamine intolerance because they're doing healthy stuff. This is the weirdest thing. So what caused a huge issue for me was I got a vitamin IV, like biohacking, vitamin IV. And because I got so much vitamin C into my body, vitamin C is a huge histamine trigger. So any huge changes in the body can cause those mast cells to go, oh, something's different here. I need to release these, basically. Chemical sensitivities for people. A lot of what I see, Bethany, now is people are doing parasite protocols or mold detoxes kind of willy-nilly. And then because their liver can't handle the load or their gut can't, the body ends up producing a lot of histamines to kind of like fight the toxins that are being released while you're doing that. So a lot of the biohacking, a lot of the really healthy stuff that people do when they go to these functional medicine doctors, they end up leaving sicker. So that's often when I know there's a histamine issue or suspect one, is when you go to the functional medicine doctors, you're doing all the right things, not even the conventional right things. You're going to the fancy doctors and you feel 100 times worse when you're going. So another thing that's a huge trigger for it is also exercise, because our exercise is inflammatory. It's good. It's a good type of inflammation. We break down muscle fibers, we rebuild, and it does have an inflammatory aspect to it. But what can happen again is it can trigger those mast cells because it's a change. It's an inflammatory response. But I just want to let you know there's like so much that can be done still that I'm excited to talk to you about too. So it's not like you just have COVID and forever things aren't the same. But for you, 4 years is a long time to feel like you didn't get your, capacity to work out back, of course.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to have it be all doom and gloom here because I'm glad you said there is hope. But before I got COVID, right, I would leg press at the, I weightlifted. I would leg press 300 pounds. I would arm curl 20 pounds. Like not to like pump I was ripped. Like I could do a lot of like heavy lifting. And then all of a sudden, and here's the interesting thing too, Michelle, even today, I can go on an hour walk or a hike with my husband and I'm fine. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, I could walk for an hour, 2 hours, and whatever. We can go to the fair all day. But like immediately for 5 minutes, if I'm like isolating maybe a muscle, then it changes. Is that
It makes weird? Total sense to me. So I'm like, my question in my head is, how nerdy do we want to go? Okay, I'm going to try to stay half nerdy, but because I want people to really like resonate with this. So part of what happens in this long COVID cascade, which is both inflammatory and it's really an attack on your nervous system too. The signals for which muscles our body should use to activate come from our brain. So if our nervous system is under some sort of what feels like an attack, basically our body will tell us, don't pump blood to that muscle. Don't pump blood flow over here. So people are getting really winded and they think it's a cardiac issue, but it's a brain issue, which is really weird and hard to understand because a lot of people have extreme heart rates from one of the conditions that's kind of clustered with MCAS often is something called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is essentially that when you change positions, your heart rate goes really fast. And the reason for that is actually it's a form of dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So it's actually a nervous system problem. But if you go to a cardiologist, that's who you'd go to. If your heart rate's going crazy, you go to a heart doctor. But the heart doctor probably won't have that answer for you because it's coming from the brain, which is really weird. So oftentimes I find people have to work out a little bit differently and mind their positions a lot. But there's definitely things to do. And I would really be focusing on like enhancing blood flow. And that's why possibly walking is better is because, again, your brain isn't activating the right muscles or sending blood to the right place. I don't know if that makes sense or if it was like,
no, it does. Yeah. It does. And it totally makes sense too, because I feel weird in my brain. I don't feel like my heart's racing. I feel like I can't read. I'm like, I can't concentrate, And I've had someone else tell me, a different doctor, he's a holistic doctor, and he was like, it's the reason you can walk outside and do all these things is because your mind is distracted by like the things around you versus like focusing on holding a position or like lifting something,
So when you are lifting, are you mindful of like neck posture? Do you have neck pain or anything like that too?
I'm very mindful. I mean, I don't even lift weights right now.
Right, because you were not feeling good when you were doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's all like a balance. And some days, like I can do yoga for 30 minutes, but then it's like I can't do it like 5 days that week. Like it's one day. It's so weird. And I know everyone's individualized. Now, I have never had this experience. However, I heard from a lot of my followers, they're like, can you talk about histamine intolerance and bone broth? Because I've heard that's a huge trigger.
Huge trigger, yeah. So histamines, the longer a food is aged, the more histamine production can happen during that time. It happens during the aging and fermentation process. So bone broth, again, here's this tricky part of histamine intolerance is that all the things that are really healthy, right? Citrus fruits, like lemon water, right? These things are so healthy. Bone broth, fermented vegetables, kimchi. We hear about these foods all the time. These are aged foods. Wine also would be a very high histamine food. So they have a higher tendency to have histamines in them. So yes, bone broth for one person can be this little, healthy gut thing. And for someone else can cause a 3-day joint pain, tremor, brain fog, diarrhea, tremendous illness. And that's really how these histamine symptoms come in something that I would call like a flare, where it's like, it just hits you for like 3 days. Like again, Bethany, maybe you doing yoga, which is something that you've done a million times. Now you're like, I have to recover for days after that experience sometimes. And I see that in my clients who are athletes like you, like lifters and everything, because there's another response happening in the body that's causing new symptoms, which is that immune response essentially, which is really frustrating. I know. Yeah.
It's super frustrating. I mean, I'm a certified yoga instructor. I would teach classes 3 times a day before COVID. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back to the bone broth thing though, now I kind of want to ask, so would yogurt be a trigger since it's fermented? Or no?
Yogurt's not that well fermented. I feel like the ones that we see, like I would say kefir or something would definitely be much more of an issue for people with histamines. I notice a lot of my clients do tolerate yogurt. I think it's generally okay, but it really depends on the person. That's something else that I'm going to say is really frustrating about histamines. Everyone is so different. I can eat like tomatoes, but I can't eat pickles still. Like there's certain things that just are more triggering for other people depending on their unique bodies. So, but yeah, yogurt I think is generally well tolerated, but the more fermented like kefir is what I would say is not well tolerated generally.
Okay. And while we're on the topic of food, I heard like, for example, foods that change over time. Let's just say you can eat a cooked piece of meat that day, but then the next day, like leftovers, it's not good for histamine.
Yes. It's part of the aging process, right? So like beef jerky is higher in histamines, right? Like aged meats, cured meats, smoked salmon, things like that. They are higher by nature of time. Over time, the histamine builds. and is created and collects. So yes, that's true. Now I'll say this. I feel like a lot of my clients can tolerate some level of leftovers, even in the extreme cases of MCAS. And I have some clients who are, out of work. Their quality of life is so low because of MCAS. So I would say even them, leftovers a day or two is usually okay. But yes, the longer or the deli meats, cured meats, beef jerky, smoked meats, those are definitely harder to tolerate.
Interesting. Yeah, because I personally notice I will not eat anything past 2 days. Like I'll eat something that I cook fresh today and then I can eat it tomorrow, but then that's it. But
then you'll start to feel it after.
Yeah. And then I can eat yogurt like nobody's business, So it's like, who knows? It's like you said, it's all individualized. Now, can we go into some symptoms of histamine intolerance? Because I feel like we even haven't touched base on that, because maybe someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, well, maybe I have it, but what should I be feeling? What are some symptoms?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are mast cells in every tissue of your body, essentially. So the symptoms can be so varied. What I've seen histamine intolerance look a lot like, and MCAS, what does it look a lot like? It looks like an allergy symptom, right? That's the first thing. It could look like a skin condition. It could look like a lot of congestion. It could look like what we would really expect for seasonal allergies, which is what we would expect when we hear the word histamine. We think of antihistamine medications usually. So we can expect those symptoms. Histamines are very excitatory. So they're very, I would call them zingy. I don't know what other word to use, but it can almost feel like when there's huge histamine levels in the body, it can feel like there's ants crawling under your skin. I had actual tremors and a lot of anxiety. The anxiety that people experience with histamines is a cruelty I would not wish on anyone, because it's so specific and extreme, and like normal measures to help with that. Like if you were to take, drink chamomile tea or things that help people with anxiety, if it's histamine related, you just have to lower the histamine. So you often will need an antihistamine medication or something, but it's a very specific type of physical anxiety that's extreme and comes on quick, and it seems like out of nowhere. I've also seen people with other mental health issues like depression. Of course, all of these are multifaceted and there's, many different root causes, but as a root cause, where it almost feels like there's like a black cloud covering people's eyes. And that also feels very physical. And the brain fog from histamines is very extreme too. Symptoms that are like lesser known from histamines is, again, these like heart rate issues. And I'll talk about the science of why that happens. People can feel like also when they stand up in a hot shower, they feel dizzy, and then their legs get turned like reddish and they get red splotches on their legs. That's a histamine potential symptom. A lot of, again, dizziness is a big sign, a lot of joint pain. And we can talk about why that is too. A lot of people experience like UTI-like symptoms or very frequent urination. And I think it's just the experience. Insomnia, I think, is another one that's worth really mentioning. Severe insomnia that also comes out of nowhere. I've had clients who've taken Ambien and Trazodone and they did nothing to help with insomnia. And then they took like a Pepcid, which is an antihistamine actually, and then went to sleep for like the first time in years. And it was like an unbelievable experience to watch. Not that the same thing works for everyone, but histamines keep you awake and alert. So the extreme version of that is extreme anxiety, panic, shaking, symptoms like that. That's just some, by the way, because they can happen anywhere in your body.
I am going to cut to the chase and tell you that Pique Tea's Radiant Skin Duo is on special right now. Just laying it out there because, as most of you know, I am a huge fan of Pique Life Tea's crystals and all of their matcha black teas and tropical powder teas. I drink them on the regular. So I feel like I'm just doing an injustice if I didn't tell you about this amazing sale right now. I seriously love all their tea crystals and the fact that they do not use any toxic tea bags, which can contaminate your tea and your drink in general just by having the chemicals that are in the bags leach into what you're consuming. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but a lot of tea bags, if not all, are just toxic. But Pique Life, all their products are tea bag free, and their products are certified organic. They are triple toxin screened for heavy metals, pesticides, and mold. And I don't know if you knew this either, but a lot of tea companies are now adding natural flavors to their teas. And we all know from my viral Instagram video showing how natural flavors aren't actually natural at all. They're actually made in a lab and are added to products to make you more addicted to that product you're consuming. Natural flavors, toxins, and chemicals are hijacking our taste buds and disrupting our endocrine system and gut health. So again, that's why I love Peak Tea, because they don't use any of that. And they do rigorous testing to make sure all their teas are free from toxins and mold. And if you're looking for a coffee alternative, Peak has a blend called Chaga Energy Elixir, which is 100% caffeine free, yet still gives you energy without the jitters and can even provide a calmness at the same time. But if you're looking for a deal, check out their website because they are always having specials. And so I really encourage you to go check out what's on sale right now, especially their Radiant Skin Duo. And if you're not sure if you're going to like any of their teas, they have a free return policy within 30 days. So if you try something and you're not happy with it, just send it back like what you didn't use and they'll just give you a refund. I mean, I just love that about this company, that they just want you to be happy and satisfied. So if you go to peaklife.com/digest, you can receive up to 15% off plus up to 2 free gifts. Again, that's peaquelife.com/digest. peaklife.com/digest. Okay, you guys, listen up. If you have the following symptoms such as constipation or diarrhea, anxiety, sugar or alcohol cravings, poor immune system, compulsive or disordered eating, low muscle mass, poor wound healing, slow recovery after workouts, heartburn or acid reflux, or digestive issues like colitis, IBS, diverticulitis, Crohn's, celiac disease, or symptoms from food sensitivities, taking L-glutamine could be beneficial. L-glutamine is one of the most important nutrients for a healthy digestive tract because of its ability to maintain the integrity of the intestinal wall. This amino acid, which is the most abundant amino acid in our body, helps heal all human tissues, especially those irritated tissues in the digestive tract. It's also been known as the calming amino acid since it's very effective at reducing anxiety, as well as sugar and alcohol cravings. Even progressive addiction treatment centers will use it to help reduce cravings. Plus, get this, you guys, in a 2011 study published in the Yonsei Medical Journal found that glutamine supports the immune system, and it's especially beneficial for patients in the hospital and those fighting viruses or overwhelming infections. Your entire immune system is protected from the toxic environment by your gut barrier. And if that barrier gets damaged, you will get sick and create an overactive immune system, producing inflammation throughout the body. Thankfully, a damaged gut lining can be reversed and can be accomplished by getting enough gut healing nutrients such as L-glutamine. Clinically, medical professionals have found this to be true with their clients, and I myself have experienced the benefits. That's why I created my very own L-glutamine powder under Bethany's Pantry. This powder is pure without any additives, fillers, flavorings, gums, or unnecessary ingredients. The ingredients are literally just one: L-glutamine. It's vegan, paleo, keto, and tasteless. So you can literally just add it to a glass of water, stir for 5 seconds, and sip without tasting anything. This amino acid also works well in smoothies, mixed in yogurt. I've even added it to my guacamole. It dissolves instantly, and you can't even tell it's there. And your body will thank you from all the benefits you're giving it to fully heal in the area you need healing, or just boosting your immune system in prep for the upcoming flu season. Guys, I am so proud to finally offer a clean L-glutamine powder I can fully recommend. If you want a bag, just go to newzest-usa.com/Bethany's Pantry, where you'll find this plus all my other Bethany's Pantry items. Again, go to newzest-usa.com/Bethany's Pantry. That's nuzest-usa.com/Bethany's Pantry. I'll also leave that link in today's show notes. You have listed a few things that I have experienced, like insomnia. I'm like writing this down, but I've anxiety. Like I had really bad anxiety after like COVID, like in 2020, 2021. And it was like, why am I having anxiety? I'm not anxious. Like I'm not fearful of anything, right? Like you said, another thing was like UTI symptoms. And I check. I'm like, I go to like the emergency room and I'm like, wait, I feel like I have a UTI. Like I have all the symptoms. And every time it's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's causing the sensation and experience of feeling like you have a UTI, and it can cause frequent urination as well. It's like what your body would feel like if it was nervous all the time, kind of, right? It's like those nervousness symptoms. And you said something so important, Bethany, which is that you were like, I'm not emotionally anxious about anything. Like the anxiety that is what I call like histamine anxiety, it's so physical and it's not explainable by mental means. You're like, I'm not even stressed right now. Like, why am I experiencing this level of anxiety? And it's really because histamines are meant to keep you alert. They're meant to keep you like focused. They're meant to keep you in case of an emergency. They're meant to keep you on. And then it's too much on, basically. And that light switch is kind of turned on all the time, which is probably, I would say, the anxiety, dizziness, tremors, insomnia make for a very low quality of life for people. It's just been heartbreaking to see, and a lot of my clients who've never, like you said, you've never had these symptoms before. Like it was such a new and crappy experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. And then you had mentioned something too, which I feel like a lot of people are experiencing, is that these only come up in quote flares. Like it's not all the time for me. Like I will feel great. And I know a lot of people too, they're like, oh, I'm just having a flare right now. What the heck? So why is that? Like sometimes the same food that we eat can cause a flare and then we eat the same thing and it's fine.
That's such a smart question. Yeah. We kind of have this bucket for histamines. So there's like a certain threshold of what you can handle, but we don't realize what's filling our histamine bucket. So stress itself has the potential to, our nerves can react with the mast cells to make them pump out those histamines too. So any amount of stress, any environmental trigger. So if people like are in a house where they just bleach the floors or something like that, bleach itself can be a trigger. Chemical smells can be a trigger. And I noticed that with the more profound cases of MCAS that I've seen with clients, the less they can tolerate. So like going to an airport, even the lighting in the airport can be a trigger. So in those times where sometimes I can tolerate these foods and sometimes I can't, well, it probably depends on, did you eat a lot of high histamine foods? Was there stress? Were you in harsh lighting? Were you sensory overloaded? Were there chemical smells? It's kind of about finding out what's going to fill your bucket and then also putting in strategies to lower those histamines after, I think is really important. But everyone's bucket gets filled for different reasons. Again, for me, that IV with 15 grams of vitamin C, I was in a flare for a month. After that, I had fevers for a week straight. I was not sick. I had just histamine fevers. And then I started to realize what it was. But I know histamine clients who can take IVs. That's for me, supplements are a huge trigger for me. Anything super healthy, too much working out, too much fermented foods, like all the good stuff that I love, I have to just be mindful of that basically. And often it takes, again, some strategies to lower those histamines in whatever way you can. Yeah.
And is there like a test that we can do to see if we have histamine intolerance?
So you can get a serum histamine test. It is not reliable. It is not amazing, but it is something. You can also get a serum tryptase test, which is another chemical messenger that comes from the mast cells to see if your mast cells are pumping that out a lot. You can get a urinary histamine test as well to kind of draw the pictures together. It is not a perfect science. Doctors will tell you it's not a perfect science, but if you also feel a million times better if you're taking an antihistamine, it tells you probably you might be going in the right direction, essentially.
Interesting. So there's really no like for sure test, you would say, or like what would you recommend?
You can get those tests, those serum lab tests you can get done. But there is really not a gold standard for histamine intolerance when it comes to lab testing.
Okay. Yeah. Would you recommend someone take an antihistamine?
Yeah, I have an addendum to that. You can actually get a biopsy of the cells in your digestive tract during an endoscopy, and they can see if there's a lot of mast cell activity there, and they can biopsy your skin too. So a biopsy is a better way for specifically mast cell activation syndrome, not histamine intolerance. But you can see what the cellular activity is in those. And then sorry.
No, and that's through an endoscopy?
Yeah, exactly. You can get an endoscopy, or you can get like a dermatologist can, I think, take skin cells and also do the same thing and biopsy it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, to see the mast cell activity. Mm-hmm.
Now, would you recommend someone take an antihistamine and just by process of elimination, see if that helps?
So I will tell you that for most clients who have severe histamine intolerance or mast cell activation syndrome, in most cases, at some point, they're going to need to trial antihistamine medications. Now, I'm a functional dietitian. It's not my joy to recommend over-the-counter medications, and I certainly can't give any medical advice at any point. But it often becomes necessary for many people. Now, that's not long-term. That doesn't mean forever, but usually for 3 months is usually the time that people have to see. Some people do not react well to them. Some people react incredibly well to them. I've seen more people react better to over-the-counters than other, like there's medications for mast cells and histamines that doctors can prescribe, and they're stronger. So I haven't seen people react as well to those. Oftentimes, yes, people are going to use some level of over-the-counters. Zyrtec is like a non-drowsy. Pepcid is also, even though we think of it as an acid blocking drug, it actually is an antihistamine drug that works on the gut specifically, which I find that Pepcid has helped people with like anxiety related symptoms because it affects your gut, which affects your vagus nerve. So it's the only thing that helped me with my tremors in the beginning, but I'm no longer on any antihistamines. And I used to have to take like 4 a day to get through the day. And now I take none for months. So it is totally possible, again, to use them in the short term to stabilize. They do not help in ways of like stopping the production of histamines, but it stops the symptoms enough for your body to have enough time to clear them out. And you can use supplements and natural means. I'm, again, functional, I'm holistic. That's always my goal. But if people need something that's more of a heavy hitter, because the quality of life is so low, I say you leave every tool on the table, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in that too. Like just with antibiotics, I don't think you should just take them for everything, but I think there's a place for them. If, they could be life-saving. So, now what's your opinion on taking antacids? Because from my understanding, it lowers the acid, which actually can disrupt your gut in terms of digesting food because you need that acid.
It is a very delicate balance. And, especially we're in the holistic and functional space, we're all obsessed with too low of stomach acid. It's like something we've been talking about, hypochlorhydria. We've been talking about it for so long. So if histamines and acid have a symbiotic relationship, so the more histamines you produce, the more acid you produce. So oftentimes, I would say in those with histamine issues, the fire is just too high. There is always a point when people take Pepcid, there's always a point they will get rebound reflux, and then you have to use a new strategy. It is not sustainable for the very long term for most people, but I will say for most people with histamine issues, they're pumping out. If they're pumping out a lot of histamine, they're also pumping out a lot of acid. So they might also, use it for that reason. It is short term in my head. It is a real concern. And I do often have to build up that stomach acid after, especially because I can't use natural remedies like lemon with histamine people, like I would normally do, those gentle things. If you're taking something like a betaine HCl, that's a huge histamine trigger, obviously. So you just have to go really slow when you're reintroducing, basically. But that's a real concern. And also having, imbalanced gut bacteria causes a histamine issue too. So, it's a seesaw, Bethany. It's a total seesaw. And it's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So how did you get to where you are now? Like, how did you get out of that histamine intolerance and, be as healthy as you are?
I want to tell you that story. And I want to tell you something also, just a statistic about long COVID specifically. And I forgot to say it before, so I wanted to remember to say it. There was one study that showed that up to 35% of people are experiencing long COVID in the country. So they did a state-by-state study, and the numbers were between 20 and 35% of people. So we're talking about millions of people who are experiencing this. Another study I want to reference is, I'll send you the actual article so you can link it. But it was an article referencing a study talking about how they found that those with severe long COVID had lower qualities of life than those who had stage 4 cancer. And the reason for that is twofold. A, the symptoms are so out of control, unexpected, and strong that people are not able to, there's so much pain involved in it for many people, they're not able to do their activities of daily life. Also, people with stage 4 cancer, everyone who knows them acknowledges it as real. And everyone who knows them says, oh, you know what? You're on chemotherapy. This is why you don't feel well. Or you have cancer. This is why you don't feel well. The isolation of this is so bad. And that's why I go on all these podcasts and I sing and talk about this, because I want people to know that no matter where they are with long COVID, their experience is real. Just because doctors don't have the language for it, it's real, and it can be absolutely debilitating. And yes, there's something we can do, which I'll definitely talk about. So when I got really sick, so mine was a combination again of mold, COVID, and then I was going to a chiropractor because I had this really bad neck pain and dizziness. And the chiropractor did adjustments in my neck, and I'm very hypermobile. So there's kind of like 3 pieces to what we call the triad: MCAS, POTS, and hypermobility. And that means that it's hypermobility in the type I have, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, is a connective tissue disorder. So I do not have good joints, blood vessels, all of those things, because I have a lack of ability to build them. So they did this massage in my neck and basically like moved all the joints in my neck. And I walked out of there and walked straight to the ER because my heart rate was 160. The joints in our neck control our heart rate and our vagus nerve, right? We know that. So it'll control heart digestion and our heart rate. So basically my brain went absolutely crazy because all these nerves were inflamed. And as my neck was trying to hold itself up, I walked out of there and I was like, I was surprised I could walk. And that resulted in basically this combination of extreme symptoms. Again, I had that IV, I had all these medical experiences. I did a mold detox, and all of these things just led to this experience of me being so freaking sick, Bethany. I couldn't hold my body up at all. Like for podcasting, if you see, a couple seasons ago, my podcast, I'm wearing a neck brace in the podcast, and I would hoist myself against the wall because I'm like, I'm still podcasting. I don't care, no matter what. But there was a point also where when I just didn't know what the heck was going on. How would someone be able to connect this chiropractic injury with histamines? It was very hard, and that was the challenge of it. I couldn't put the pieces together. So I would just sit on Reddit and I would be like, why do I feel sick after IV? Why do I feel sick after chiropractic adjustment? And I'd started to put these pieces together. Oh my God, this is a connective tissue and a histamine thing. This is a nervous system thing. But I was at the point where for me to go to this bathroom from this office, I had to hoist myself up onto a computer chair and push myself by my feet because I could not stand up. I couldn't walk around the block. And now I'm living life exactly like I was before. And what it took was very specific stuff to help with my heart rate, very specific stuff to help with histamines, digestion. And I started going really slow and just acknowledging, like, I'm going to get to the finish line. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. And it took a lot of nervous system retraining and just treating my body in a way that I had never treated it before. And really a lot of it was due to reconditioning that I had to do, but in a slow and methodical way. And also just targeting histamines like really, really, really hard. But I had no idea I was going to get better in the beginning. I just had to go on blind faith because I had no examples. I had no practitioners who had worked with this before. My colleagues are the smartest functional medicine doctors in the world. They were like, we don't know what's going on because it was so early. It was COVID. We didn't know what the results of this were. So it took a lot of blind faith and a lot of, all right, if you can only walk 5 steps today, great, but you're going to walk the 5 steps today. Okay, your heart rate's going crazy when you're walking. We're going to walk anyway, but we're going to go really slow. And we're going to wear compression socks. We're going to help your blood flow in whatever way, and just slow and steady. And also a lot of tolerating extreme discomfort, unfortunately, throughout the way.
Oh my gosh. So did you have someone, I guess, looking over you and like prescribing what to do, or were you actually treating your own self?
So I had one of my best friends, Jillian Greaves. She's an amazing functional dietitian. When I started my mold journey 5 years ago. I had a very severe mold exposure. She was like, I need you to look into histamines too. So she kind of planted that seed in my head. And she was like, here's a couple things. I did go to a naturopath also, who I actually was one of those people who did have really high histamines in my blood. So it was very obvious also. I was lucky it showed up basically, who did help along the way. But it was basically me researching, putting together little pieces here and there to create the momentum. So I treated myself, but I used and leveraged amazing colleagues and information along the way. But no one had the full picture. No one could get there with the full picture, unfortunately. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to feel normal again?
I would say from the mold time was so many years ago. From when I had my crisis, it took about a year to feel back to the baseline before the incident happened, but it took a year and a half, 2 years to be way better than I was before, I would say.
Okay. That's actually not bad considering your entire life,
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then like you're saying, a lot of us also, like I had weird histamine stuff and I didn't realize what it was back in the day. And I'm like, oh yeah, I would tell my doctor, I can't eat chocolate or almonds. And he's like, it's not an allergy, and I'm like, I know, but why? He's like, it's not an IBS thing. Like, what is that? And it was always like, I'm brought back to, I had this issue probably a lot longer than I realized too.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, are there ways to prepare our food? For example, let's take almonds. Can we take the skins off of almonds? Does that help or no?
It could. Again, it really depends. Almonds aren't so high in histamines. I don't know. I just had a reaction to them specifically. I would say like not cooking food in vinegar would be a really good start. Using less lemon and vinegar, which makes food taste worse, which stinks because they're the best. That's something I would really be watching out for. Like you said, fresh foods. And also, like I would have in the beginning stages, I would try to think about tomatoes and like, again, citrus fruits. But the other thing I want to mention, Bethany, is you can also there's a specific enzyme, DAO, diamine oxidase, that you can take that helps you break down histamines with food. Seeking Health has one called Histamine Digest. It's an amazing supplement. And I think Ben Lynch's products are like the best for histamines, by the way. That Seeking Health is awesome. You can literally eat many people can tolerate high histamine foods as long as they're taking the DAO with it. So it's not like you can always do something, right? Nettle leaf tea is also profoundly helpful too. So if I'm also, and this is something I think we should definitely talk about, with the days of the menstrual cycle. So this is a really weird histamine thing. Histamine and estrogen, much like stomach acid, are best friends. So the more estrogen, the more histamine is released. So a lot of women experience symptoms in their menstrual cycle during PMS. Those with histamine issues actually experience it at the day their period ends, or on day like 20-ish of their cycle. So day like 6 to 9 and day 19 to 21, which is when the start of the rise in estrogen happens twice. So that was a huge sign for me too. I'm like, I feel fine during my period and fine during PMS, but I feel awful when my period ends. Like, what is the deal with that? So if I have a client who also has that same experience, I'll say, don't work out really hard on these days. Make sure you're taking your supplements, drink extra nettle leaf tea, do those, helpful measures to make sure that you're good, and just know that we all have these cycles. So we need to kind of track and understand what's our thing. And that was definitely very profound for my clients too.
Oh, those are such great tips. And, the recommendations with the tea and the digestive enzymes. What else? Like, what supplements would help with histamine intolerance? But also, are there any supplements we should avoid? Like maybe we're taking something thinking it's good for us and, it's causing the issue.
The avoid list is very big. Basically, any gut supplements, unless they're like I think L-glutamine is very gentle, usually well tolerated, but a lot of the gut supplements that create probiotic bacteria, they're fermented, right? The fermentation process creates histamines within the gut. So a lot of times if you're taking a probiotic, there's actually histamine specific probiotics people can switch to. Now, some people tolerate them, by the way, and like you're the gut health queen, so you know your audience and you know your people too. Everyone can tolerate different things, but I would say anything that's really harsh, like a mold or a parasite protocol, you don't want to go digging for trouble because you will find it, basically. So if you create a war inside of your body by doing that, because think about it, it's a very involved, intensive process to do like a mold detox. If you're trying to rip something out of your body, there will be a response. So those kind of supplements definitely are very instigating for people. I would say also B vitamins and vitamin C vitamin C is helpful for histamines in the long term because it helps diamine oxidase, that DAO enzyme, to operate, and it helps our liver to detox. However, vitamin C and vitamin Bs, all of the B vitamins, are extremely histamine instigatory. So I have a lot of clients who come to me and they're like, I took a B vitamin and I have never been the same since. And I'm like, you have to go really slow with it. So we often need those B vitamins for our liver, but you have to go crazy slow. Any supplements with histamines, Bethany, if you have a histamine intolerance, you need to basically get capsules, pour out 1/8 of it, and start that slow, because any change in the environment causes that response. So even if it's a histamine supplement, I have clients start with a half dose or less, basically. Supplements that are amazing for histamines are ginger. Quercetin is usually, again, very well tolerated. I'll just tell you, like, I love, there's a supplement called Histo X by Apex Energetics. I love that supplement. That seems to be quite well tolerated too. Ginger teas are amazing. Again, that nettle leaf tea. There's a lot of teas that are really helpful. Rose hips, flower essences are incredible too. So there's a lot of beautiful things like that. I'll also say this, anything that helps your nervous system also helps with histamine. So if there's certain herbs or supplements that people find supportive for their nervous system to cool and calm them, like passion flower, something I talk a lot about, those kind of things also help the histamine issue. So the goal is always reduce histamines and calm the nervous system. Those are the first line of defense for supplements.
Okay. It's interesting you said glutamine too, because that's something I always swear by with my followers. It's like helps rebuild the gut. It's amazing. And I've had no issues with that. And then just regarding probiotics, I always swear by like Bacillus coagulans, just because it's gentle and it's very effective. And so there's that. But also, what do you think about CBD as far as calming the nervous system? And could that be a pro or a con?
I think CBD, as long as people, I haven't found it be particularly histamine-y. I think as long as, again, if it makes someone feel calm. For myself, if it's CBD that has THC in it or something, I don't like feeling high. So that would make me feel very anxious. It depends on if it helps the person, but I have seen CBD be really helpful for people. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't see a histamine issue with that.
Okay. Yeah. And just kind of going back to the fermented foods, I was thinking, so many of us, we opt for sprouted, sprouting your rice, sprouting your grains before you eat them and all of these things. Now, could that actually be causing an issue because you're essentially prolonging the cooking and germinating them?
Carbohydrate foods, like starchy foods like that, are generally less high in histamines. There's not as many of them, except for like sweet ones, like fruits. So that's not, could it make some level of a difference? Yes. Is that like the heavy hitter? No, that's not the top thing I would be concerned with. No.
Okay. Yeah. That just came up to my mind about like sprouting.
It's a smart question. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, you have so many, tips here. And I know just we're pressed for time, but I do want to ask a little bit. I know you had talked about just the science part of the whole heart racing and why.
I want to talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. This is my favorite thing to talk about. So, because it's so nerdy, but once it clicks for people, I feel like it can change their lives. Bethany, the other thing I want to say is the reason, again, I like to talk about things through client experiences is because I know there's going to be one of your amazing listeners, and there are many who are going to have this experience and they will not know what the heck is going on. So just knowing what's going on can be transformative for people. And I think that's like the gift I want people to take away is like, my body's not weird or different. It's playing a different game. I say, like, with the histamine issues, the body's playing chess when we're playing checkers. So it's like, we just have to learn how to play chess and then we'll know how to move. So histamines do this action called vasodilation. And what vasodilation is it's a widening of our blood vessels. Okay. So let's say we're standing for too long in the same position, which could be happening when you're weight training, by the way. And we'll talk about, I had some ideas about your weight training too. If we're standing up, let's say we're standing in line in an amusement park. If our blood vessels are open, all of our blood is going to drop down because of gravity. If we have good, juicy blood flow, vasoconstriction, the blood will pump back up to our heart. If we do not have amazing vasoconstriction because the histamines are causing the blood vessels to widen, the blood just drops. What happens then? Your heart freaks out and your brain freaks out because like, we need blood up here. You have to send me blood up here. That's why like putting your legs up on the wall can be so amazing because you're sending the blood flow back down essentially. So what is happening in this scenario of POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is when people are sitting and then they stand up, is that the blood is dropping down very often. There's a couple other types of POTS, but this is one situation of what could be happening. And then your heart goes, oh my God, we have to get blood up here. Starts pumping really fast to make that constriction happen. What helps people with this specific kind of issue from histamines is, of course, the antihistamines, anything that helps with histamines, but in the moment, drinking a lot of like salt water, because salt helps us for our heart to pump. That's why we're so scared of it for high blood pressure, right? It causes our blood vessels to be filled and then pump really juicy. Something like compression socks. It's almost like making your body like a Go-Gurt tube so it gets the pressure, right? And that's like you're kind of squeezing stuff together. I have clients wear abdominal binders, which kind of looks like an ace bandage. You just wrap around your waist and that gets the blood pumping like that Go-Gurt tube, essentially. So anything that helps to create a nice blood flow will prevent, which is weird in many people, that high heart rate and that dizziness. The dizziness and brain fog can very much be from this lack of blood flow to the brain. They actually just developed a device, this company called Stat Health maybe, and it will literally tell you about your cerebral and brain blood flow. You like attach it and it'll tell you about that because it's so profound from long COVID that people are not getting the perfect amount of blood flow to their brain. So anything that creates that pump, anything that gets your blood pumping, and that's why I think walking helps you too, because you're actually getting nice blood flow throughout your body by doing that. But throwing in like a compression sock when you're working out or something could be really helpful too, just because it's stagnant and then there's some jerky potential movements that we're doing. Or the other piece of the conversation is if you are hyperextending or moving joints out of place, that can also create a blood flow issue and a histamine issue if there's any hypermobility.
Okay, man, so many great tips. And I know that so many listeners are probably wondering, okay, I think I may have this. What now? Like, where do I go from here?
I think that first of all, if you like, there's resources available, and I'll tell you about one of them. I do have an information center on this called the Highly Sensitive Body Hub. I kind of clustered all of these conditions into what I would call like a person who's in a highly sensitive body. I feel like you're probably, Bethany, because you seem so like empathetic, you're probably a highly sensitive person also, like I would assume, just from your online presence. Like I feel like you're always helping people. Yeah. This is like a person whose body reacts to things in a way that they don't understand, basically. And then we find that there's actually a lot of patterns and a lot of us are very similar. So I literally took 15 practitioners who are all at the top of their game in these conditions or in this experience and put it into this one place. So it's like a one-time fee, you get access, and it's like hundreds of videos, handouts, everything, all in these conditions, tools and strategies. If you're just doing it at home and you want to start kind of like playing with a little nettle leaf tea or a couple things that might help with histamines that we talked about, a little ginger tea, things like that, that's somewhere to start. And I would say the first place you start before experimenting is track your symptoms. If you're a woman, track the day of your cycle when the symptoms are happening. If you do a really hard workout and then you feel sick for 3 days, you're like, the workout is where I need to look. Start tracking your symptoms and trying to create a picture of what are your triggers specifically so that you can know how to manage those flares in addition to working kind of, at that root underneath it all.
Yeah, no, it's such a great tip to have a diary and say, okay, do I react to bone broth? Do I react to leftovers and all of the things? And we'll be sure to put that link so people have that resource so that they can go and kind of, hopefully have someone in their corner, cheering them on and helping them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would also just say, again, this is MCAS, histamine intolerance. It's the biggest opportunity to learn about yourself. It's the biggest opportunity to slow down, which like none of us want to do. We're like, no, I want to go faster. I don't want to slow down. But it's a call home. I really feel that way. Like it made me live my life in a way that was different and better, honestly, because now I listen to my body. I know what my body needs and we're very in touch. But you have to do that in order to heal from it. And that's the truth.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to leave people with some hope because, you can overcome, like, obviously you're a wonderful testimony to that. And so, it's not going to be like this forever if you just take the right steps. And I think knowing what the cause is the first step. And then now you have the tools to treat it and make that way to a better health.
100%. And so I have a practice, also a private practice where I do one-on-one coaching, me and 4 other practitioners are in my practice. We have certain specialists in MCAS. And what we've been seeing is just amazing, Bethany. Like it's the hope, like people going from really having such limited mobility to being able to like literally work out, like do the things they were doing before. People who haven't been on an airplane in years because they were having such severe reactions, taking 8-hour flights to Paris, like just like really inspiring things. And I will tell you, if there's one message to take away is that you cannot give yourself the luxury of giving up in ways of a mental state. You can't. You just have to fake it so much and be like, I don't know how the heck this is going to happen, but I'm going to do it because if you're listening to this, I know you can at least get 1 to 10% better. That's a fact. And even your mindset can change. I'm hopeful that people can get way better than that. But once you start to understand your body and you start playing chess instead of checkers, like the sky is the limit. And I've never had more hope for all of us than I do right now. And I really mean that. I am like boundless hope for all of us.
I think that's a great note to end this podcast. Michelle, we're definitely needing to have you back because we have so much more to talk about.
I cannot wait. And you are just an amazing host. And I've been your follower for so many years. And thank you so much for having me on. It's what an honor. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To check out more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com, and to email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.